Hello, today we'll be going over Lab 4, Physics 2212 on Faraday's Law. To start off, the purpose of this experiment was to study Faraday's Law by analyzing the interaction between a falling magnet and an induced current driven in a tube aluminum foil. The materials that we used to conduct this experiment were a smartphone, the bar magnet, a roll of aluminum foil, and a ruler to do measurements. The physics fundamentals behind this experiment were Ohm's law, which we have studied in the previous lab, Lenz's law, which says that the direction of an electric current induced in a conductor by a changing magnetic field will be such that that magnetic field created by the induced current opposes the initial magnetic field. And we also have Faraday's law, which says that states the interaction between a magnetic field and an electric circuit to produce an electromotive force, which is also known as the electromagnetic induction, and we will be going over the concepts of magnetic field and magnetic flux. In this slide, we have a snapshot of the relevant formula that was used throughout the experiment, and you will also be seeing how these formulas were used to modify the computational model and obtain a result of the average time of the flowing magnet. For the experimental setup, we curled an aluminum foil of length of 0.34 meters with a width of 0.006 meters, an inner radius of 0.02 meters, and an outer radius of 0.026 meters. Then we let the magnet fall through, and the mass of the magnet was of 0.024 kilograms, and the dipole that we obtained from lab 2, which was of 3.130 newtons meter over Tesla. After conducting the experiment, we obtained an average time of 1.28 seconds, where we can see that it's not very different from that obtained in the computational model of 1.34 seconds. As checkpoints for the procedure in this experiment, we have the reason why we could not use a ferrous tube, for example, a steel pipe in this experiment, is because these are made of materials that will also become an induced magnet, for example, iron, and this will affect the results of our experiment. And what happens to the magnet? How does this compare to a magnet falling in free space without a tube? We know that the magnet falls much more slower than if the magnet was falling through free space without a tube. Going over the computational model, the first step that we did was to change the values for the length, the width, and the inner radius of our tube. Then we also included the mass and the magnetic dipole, just as we did in the analytical part of the experiment. And we created a function that will calculate the magnetic field, and we used the relevant formula that you see on the right. As a third step, we calculated a function to calculate the magnetic flux, and we know that the magnitude of the difference in magnetic flows over time will equal to our magnitude of our electromotive force, which was then used in step 4 to calculate our current. Moving on with our computational model, with the help of video lecture 43, we were able to edit the following lines and obtain the magnetic force on the ring. We were also able to obtain the net force on the magnet by adding the force due to gravity and the force of magnetic field due to the ring around the magnet. And then we used the concepts of physics 1 for our final velocity and our position of our bar magnet. Once all the lines were edited, we run the program, and this image that you see right here are the results that we obtained for our experiment. We have the graph which shows the velocity over time and how the bar magnet flows through our ring, and we see that the time for our bar magnet to flow through was of 1.34 seconds. Now, interpreting our results, we know that the intensity of the curling along the tube indicates the magnitude of the current flowing through each ring, and we were able to come with the conclusion that the red string was for our counterclockwise direction and the blue for our clockwise direction. Also, changing or flipping the magnitude does not have any changes in our results. We would just see a change in the direction of the current. The computational model and our real-world system were very similar to each other, and we would make the computational system better by adding more rings or also calculating the air resistance. And we can see in the next slide how the shape indicates the change in the forces. We can see that in the first portion we have unbalanced forces and our speed is increasing. In the second portion of the graph, where we see a constant line, that means that the forces are balanced, and on the last portion where we see a decrease in our speed, we have again unbalanced forces. To finish up, we have our what if questions, and what if the resistivity of the conductor were reduced as close as possible to zero? And how would the dynamics on the falling magnet change? This means that when the resistivity goes to zero, the forces pushing up will increase, which will be balanced with the gravity pulling down, and then this will stop the magnet flowing altogether. And what if the holes or slots were cut into the tubes? How could this affect the ring current in your model? The normal flow of the current will be disrupted, and the braking force will not be as strong due to the reduced amount of current flowing through the tube. Thank you for paying attention, and I hope this lab was helpful.